So very good morning. Today we would be focusing only on your UPSC mains preparation. So far we were discussing about how what are the expected topics for your prelims. We would be coming up with your expected topics for your mains examination as well. But as of now, the main focus is what UPSC has officially released as the guidelines for the first time for the students to know about the answer writing. But this is something that we have been telling students. I have been personally interacting with the students and talking to them about the answer writing, and that's something that's very important, and most of the students, I don't know from where, miss these points. So what UPSC is actually looking for now is a kind of expertise in your subject. So it very well brings off a student from a non-subject background and a student from a subject background. So it's very important that either if you are picking up a new subject, try to develop a very good expertise into that, have an in-depth knowledge into that. Don't just read a superficial Indian author or a kind of guide that would help you sail through. That won't suffice, first of all. The next important thing that you need to focus on is a real world experience. Since you have lot of lateral entries coming in, the idea nowadays is to focus on experience. So be very practical in your answer writing. That's very important. You need to have a very good coherence of thoughts. So coherence of thoughts is again something that is must. I have seen students who start writing something, then they forget that idea, start with a different viewpoint, then they remember that, okay, I should write a case study, I was told by someone. They put in a case study which is totally irrelevant. So don't do stuff like that. That would lose you marks rather than adding to your marks. Be very particular about the coherence of thought. And the most important thing I would tell students is not to go by the trend. So don't go by model answer, give me model answer for this question and I'll be happy enough. No. What UPSC is looking for nowadays is an independent thought process. So be very particular in your thoughts, be very specific what you want to reveal, and you must have an independent idea, an independent perspective, be it any subject in UPSC, even for your optionals as well as for your GS. You have theories or general aspects that come in. Now what the students tend to do is, it's not just the general aspect that is asked these days. Along with the general aspect, you also have a present day relevance. That is a common thing that is in UPSC questions these days. And this is where you try to bring in your independent point of view. So bring in your own thought process, your unique thoughts, your unique ideas. Another important thing that I have seen most of the students doing is they try to get their copies evaluated by X and Y institutes or wherever it is. But the real fact is, most of the places, the evaluation for your answer writing is done by those who themselves have never appeared for UPSC mains or have never qualified UPSC mains, because if they had, they won't be there, first of all. So the next important thing you need to understand is those who do not have a subject background in that subject, who have never read any of the subjects, are from engineering background or any other background, taking any other optional and evaluating copies of any other further optional. So with that kind of market, a student who is seriously preparing for UPSC lays behind, and they actually forget the path in which way they should score. If you don't do anything, follow the rule, the thumb of the rule, and that's where you started with your class 10 board examination. So even now with your board examinations, if you can get 99% of the marks with the same level of question papers that are being asked, same answer writing, I don't understand how a student cannot secure even 50% in their UPSC mains. Because if that is practical, you become a topper in UPSC. So is it so difficult? Is it a kind of sudden deterioration that is seen, or is it the students lose their idea as to what way they should write the answer, and writing answer becomes a challenge for them. So it's not a challenge, it's something that what you have been doing since your childhood, the paragraph writing, essay writing, pressay writing. So all of those writings are a foundation stone, and it's just that you have to carry forward. The only thing is, bring in more and more of creative stuff, more and more of recent updates, contemporary issues. So if you are very regular with your Yojna, Kurukshet, Down to Earth, Geography and You, I would say these four are the basic magazines, and the editorial of the Hindu, you are all set with some wonderful examples to write in your UPSC mains. Again, the mains examination is very, very predictable. Say for this year, Article 35A, Article 370, then you have the Triple Talaq Bill, then you have the Unregulated Money Bill. So those are some of the very important topics. If we talk about the political science, if we talk about environment, you have yet another topics where you have the global issues, you have the climate conferences, you have the Katowice conference that took place recently. So those are some of the most important focus points that you need to come up with. We would be covering a kind of expected list of questions that would be very probable. Like if you talk about 2015-16, you had a kind of series where you had interlinking of rivers, that was the main focus. This year I would say water crisis is a main focus. Then you have, if you go into science, you have the AES, the encephalitis that is spread in the Muzaffarpur. So that's one of the important topics in news, a major focus for Down to Earth. Again, heat waves was very, very important. We have covered that in the Down to Earth edition. So that's very, very important. Focus on the core things. Don't focus on what is the trend, what the toppers have done. Think that you are a topper by yourself and prepare in your own unique strategy specifically for your mains. This is not applicable for your prelims, but yes, for your mains, your strategy should be very, very unique. Now, lots of requests are coming up for adding to the WhatsApp group. So definitely all those who have sent the request, we would be adding you shortly. So make sure just you put in your name and subject. So they would add you to the groups, and we would have a regular update, some important topics that would be coming up for you as and when we bring in more stuff. Now what UPSC has officially released, now this is what something that I have been telling students throughout the answer copies that I have been checking. With each phone call, I talk to students about the same issue every time. Don't bring in any religious symbol. Don't reveal your name, your identity. So if that is the case, your copy is ignored at the very first go. So you lose your entry into the examination at the very first point, okay? So no religious symbols, no religious demarcations on your answer copy, no name or nothing in your answer copy that should reveal your identity. Even let's say for your compulsory paper, if you are writing a letter, you can write down regards XYZ. If the name is given, you can mention the name. If not, don't put in your name, put XYZ or ABC. Okay, so that's one of the common things. Again, writing the name and cutting that off is equally bad. So it's not just that you are writing the name, if you are writing the name and cutting it, that means intentionally somewhere you are trying to reveal your identity. That should not be done. Okay, the next important thing is, even where you have the examiner's signature or something like that, no name disclosure should be done. None of the places should be there where you should plead to the examiner, give me more marks, this is my last attempt, please take my copy carefully. And these are the remarks that actually are seen in the answer copies. This is not a kind of joke anytime. So these are something that are actually seen in the answer copy. So be very, very particular what statements you are putting. Confine yourself to the facts, to the figures. Make your writing legible. So this is a kind of simple where I can read something but a very little of that. So make your handwriting legible. I understand at this age when you are appearing for your mains, it's practically not possible to improve your writing. But yes, give it a little try, at least to make it legible. In case your handwriting is not at all good, you have qualified for your prelims. Another important thing you could do is put in your answers in a kind of point-wise manner or a kind of diagrammatic representation of some of the concepts that could be done. Don't bring unnecessary diagrams into your answer. Never use a mixed language. It's just a kind of quote, for example, Vasudev Kutumbakam. So that phrase itself is not ignored. Okay, so if you are using that much of Sanskrit or that much of another language that is there, that's totally fine. But the one paragraph of English, one paragraph of Hindi or another language won't do. So don't make your paper bilingual. So that's the main concern. Also, don't write half of your paper in pen and another half in pencil, because some of the students, the things they are confident on, they write it in pen. They take a pencil to draw the diagram and then they forget and they write the remaining answer with the pencil itself. I know there is constraint of time, but be very careful. You can use different colored pens for highlighting the points, for underlining the main points, for labeling in the diagrams, but not for a kind of complete paragraphs that could be written with a separate colored pen. Again, very very important, when you are marking, when you are highlighting, if you are using multiple pens, make sure you are not using gel pens which blot onto the other side. If that happens, you would lose space for writing and it would give a very untidy look to your answer copy. Also, sometimes students don't know certain questions, so they just cut the question and change the question. I have seen many of the students doing that in my model papers that I have circulated. So if they don't know, they just remove it and introduce a new question and write answer on it. Even if you do that, you won't gain marks on that. Okay, so make sure that you don't do that. The next important thing is bringing in unnecessary diagrams. So here you have a case where this diagram is not at all relevant. I have seen this a lot in the optional papers. I don't know from where students are told to introduce at least one theory with an answer. So any answer, any theory, no relation between the two. They just mix that, create a certain link which is not understandable by either the examiner or the person who is writing the answer. Just for the sake of introducing the theory, never do it. Another important thing is margins. So sometimes students introduce a diagram in the margin saying that there is lack of space. Sometimes they put up the point numbers. Sometimes they mark the time point for their own convenience. I understand that's for their own convenience. Okay, 10 o'clock, I have reached this much. 10:30, I have reached this much. I have completed half of the paper, 3/4 of the paper. But no, that is something that is not required. You can have something in the rough space where you could mark down something and then rub it towards the end. That is all fine, but not in the margins. Nothing in the margins. Margins should be neat. And then again, however, that's not part of the official guidelines, but beyond the margin, students leave another margin. For example, let's say they write 2 sentences here and they have to start a point. So rather than starting from 1 to here, they start at 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's only half of the space they are consuming and the rest half of the space is totally empty. So don't just waste the space, because examiner very well knows that you don't know this answer and as a result you are trying to fill up the space. So that should not be an impression. And be very very specific. Even for the theoretical subjects, you can secure 90 plus marks. That has been practically seen by me for my graduation and post-graduation. So don't think this is a kind of subject that is historical in nature or a subject that is dealing with thoughts. If you have your own unique strategy for writing, a uniqueness in your answer, a good content as compared to another, it should not be an average content, it should be something that should be really really different in your answer, then there is no way that you can secure even 80-90% in your theoretical subjects, be it history only. Okay, the next is, what is the guideline that you should do for your UPSC. So for your UPSC, it's rightly said that you have to write your civil services mains 2018-19 whatsoever exam, the medium of language that you have picked. So it could be English or regional language that you have picked. Also, if you are cancelling, it should be something like a cancelled check. So you have to clearly mark the word cancelled, and that's the section that the examiner would ignore. However, as far as my suggestions go, don't cancel anything. Think twice before you are writing. It's not a good strategy to cancel, because if it's a kind of little of error, you can overwrite and correct it, but huge chunks of your answer you should not cancel. It gives a negative impression. Sometimes it so happens that there is a theory, you wrote something that was exactly opposite and you cancelled it, and then you wrote the right answer. So it clearly reveals that there was a confusion in mind, and when that's the case, you lose the marks, because despite the fact that you have mark cancelled, examiner has a probability to read what is written in the section on cancelled. So make sure that that does not happen. Okay, Vineet and all those who have request for the groups, yes, definitely, whatever class, whatever standard you are there, be it class 1 to your college, all of the students can send in their request. We have separate WhatsApp group for each level, so they would be added based on those categories. Okay, so I just request you to keep on adding or writing your answers. The more you write, the more you practice. Focus more on the editorials, develop your independent thought process, and think from a point of an administrator what real changes you would try to bring into the ground. Specifically, I would recommend for your ethics paper, that's GS paper 4. That's a paper where most of the students are very afraid of, specifically the case studies. So don't worry, we would be covering a lot of those in the upcoming sessions. Stay tuned, stay subscribed, have a wonderful day ahead.